Martin Thompson blinked, his vision going hazy as the familiar sight of his office dimmed into darkness. It wasn't the first time this had happened. For weeks, he'd experienced brief moments where everything around him seemed to morph, shift, and then return to normal. He initially dismissed it as stress-related, but this time it was clear something was very wrong. The blackness gave way to an eerie, red-hued landscape. The buildings were twisted, like something out of a Salvador Dali painting, and the sky was streaked with unnatural colors. Martin could feel his heartbeat quicken. Was he dreaming? A distant, haunting scream jolted him to his senses. No, this felt too real. "Where am I?" he whispered, though no one was around to answer. He walked, or rather dragged himself forward, his legs heavy as if wading through molasses. Just as the fear began to consume him, the red landscape dissolved, and he was back in his office, drenched in sweat. The clock on his desk ticked away, marking only 2 minutes since his shift began. Desperate for answers, Martin turned to Dr. Helen Carter, a renowned physicist in quantum realities. She listened patiently as Martin explained his experiences. "You might be experiencing dimensional shifts," she said thoughtfully. "Our reality is just one layer of many. Think of it as pages in a book." Martin's world darkened once more before she could finish. This time, he found himself in a forest, but it wasn't any forest he knew. The trees had eyes, all watching him, tracking his every move. Panic set in, and he bolted, only to hit an invisible barrier that seemed to pulse with energy. He screamed in frustration, kicking at the ground. Again, the forest dissolved, replaced by a deserted, crumbling cityscape. Each shift was more terrifying than the last, filled with creatures and horrors that words couldn't express. He saw shadows creeping towards him, heard whispers that seemed to come from within his mind. The shifts were becoming more frequent. Dr. Carter's earlier words echoed in his thoughts. "You need to find an anchor," she had told him. "Something that ties you to your original reality. A memory, a feeling, anything strong enough to hold on to." Martin tried to focus. He thought of his childhood home, the scent of his mother's cooking, his dog's excited barks. The current dimension began to waver, its horrors bleeding away. He concentrated harder, tears streaming down his face. And then silence. He was back in his office, breathing heavily, but everything seemed normal again. Martin knew the shifts could return, but at least now, he had a fighting chance and an anchor to ground him. His reality had started to crumble, but he was determined to hold it together, one memory at a time.